How's it going, Bayou City Soccer fam? It's Diego again, and we've got another matchup here coming from the Angel City FC loss, and we have another opportunity to talk with somebody from across the league. We've got Michael Shaw from Fleur-de-lis, talking all things Racing Louisville. Michael, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, of course. Before we start, talk to us a little bit about you and the squad and kind of a little bit about yourself. That way, the BCS fam can get to know you a little better.
Sure, I've been covering Racing Louisville since almost since its inception, pretty much since the beginning of the first season. I maybe picked up maybe one or two games into the first season. Out of necessity, really, nobody else was really doing much coverage of racing at the time. Now there's a lot more coverage, and I've continued it um, from there, really more out of vanity more than anything else. um, so yeah, I run a website called Fleur-de-lis FC.com. We started off as strictly a Racing Louisville website. We kind of branched out into Lou City, which is the men's team in town. It's a USL Championship club. Do a little bit of coverage for them, but it's majority of the coverage that I do is on Racing Louisville.
That's awesome. I mean, glad to have, an OG talking here with us and talk to me a little bit about, your experience of, growing with the team and kind of seeing kind of that maybe that culture grow, because I mean, I know it's been especially a couple of years since Louisville has come up as one of the expansion teams, but yeah, talk to me about that.
Yeah, it's been through some growing pains. We definitely had a rough first season for a couple different reasons. But it's been a slow and steady, if not improvement in the standings, then improvement in kind of the culture around the team. Now that we have Bev Yanez as the head coach, I think we've got the right coach now. She again is somewhat limited by the market itself. Louisville's not the biggest market. The attendance there could be better. But I think for size of market, what the club can afford to spend on the club, I think it's progressing well, even though they're off to a slow start this season.
I mean, that's all well and good because culture at the end of the day is something that will get you attention regardless of the wins and losses. But I mean, it's early on into the season. You've had 3 games to kind of like measure kind of how Racing Louisville's kind of looking, kind of the philosophies they want to take on this season. Um, Walk me through a little bit of what you've seen throughout the first 3 games.
Well, what I've seen is a squad that isn't healthy, number one. So it's tough to do too much judgment because if you want to say, best starting 11, we're not close to that yet. We haven't seen Racing present anything close to what I would say is a starting 11 that would be ideal for them. They've run into a lot of injuries. There's been a history of that, unfortunately, with Racing. I kind of anecdotally track kind of the history of that a little bit. And several times last season, Racing would put out a squad of bench less than 9 players.
Hmm.
And sometimes, even when they put out a bench of 9 players, it'd have two keepers on the bench, which, not that unusual, but, raises eyebrows. Last match, they had 7 players on the bench, and two of them were keepers. So they had 5 healthy outfield players to sub in. So we really don't know what they are other than not healthy at the moment. So it's really tough to be too critical of that. But what we've seen on the pitch is 1 point out of 3 matches, which is the record for the lowest start to a season for them. They had 2 points, I believe, in 2022.
Hmm.
Historically, they don't get off to a fast start. They're a team that kind of likes to build into the season and maybe press on as it gets later in the season to be there around the end of the season. This is not a club that's ever going to win the Supporters Shield.
Hmm.
It's going to be one that's going to have to kind of sneak in at the bottom end of the playoffs and try to cause some disruption there. So, not on track for that, but not too far away from that yet either.
Okay, and kind of with that disruption, I mean, they have an opportunity to do so in Houston. I mean, the Dash just recently lost against Angel City in a game where they conceded 2 goals in 2 minutes. Do you see any like disruption or any ability for Racing to really crack into this team? And if so, walk me through kind of who is going to do that, or if any philosophy with coaching is going to be the responsibility of that.
Yeah, I think the number one fear for me this season is could this team survive with an extended absence by Emma Sears? And she missed the last match. I think we saw what the team looked like without her on the pitch. So she's obviously the danger on the pitch. The goals are going to come from her or through her or because she's pulled part of the field with her. So when she's not on the pitch, it's tough sometimes to know where the goals are going to come from. They got a late concession goal in their last match on a last ditch header that basically was the last touch of the match. So from an attacking perspective, it's a little bit hard to envision right now where the goals are going to come from. I mean, they could got players who can score. Kayla Fisher is one that is dangerous and can score. Sarah Weber is a kind of classic number nine, likes to play with her back to the goal some. So think of a real classic number nine in those terms. And they've got some other skilled players that can contribute. But if they're going to trouble Houston, it's likely going to have to be a 80 to 90% healthy Emma Sears or B getting a goal or two to a set piece.
Okay. And I mean, set pieces is something that Houston's really kind of struggled in under Fabrice Catrat. I think um, set pieces and transitional play is really where, I mean, not only in all of football, but the Dash themselves has conceded really the most amount of their goals. And I feel like you get a team that, is going to need that opportunity to really capitalize and get some points on the road. And I think the Dash definitely need to like note that. G- Rewinding a little bit about the schedule, you mentioned 1.3 games, but looking at the three games that you've played, you have Seattle and you have Washington, two historically extremely solid teams, in Washington being a top three team in the league last year. I mean, it doesn't seem like, you know, it doesn't seem like the most negative outlook when it comes to the strength of schedule. I Would you agree?
Yeah, I think if you looked at it on paper, you've got a tough schedule right out of the bat. It was North Carolina and then the Spirit and then the Rain. Um, Historically, Racing struggles in Cary, North Carolina. They really just got their first victory in Cary last year ever, but they had gotten run off the pitch several times in previous seasons in Cary. So that wasn't a complete surprise first match of the season. I think the most disappointing one of those is the Spirit match where they were up 2-0 to halftime and couldn't hold on. That's
Mhm.
also been a story of Racing is giving up late leads. And then the performance in Spokane for the Rain, it was they were relocated to Spokane. Wasn't great, but those are good teams, and again, any team in this league that is not an expansion team, and we'll see about the expansion teams. Any team that isn't an expansion team is always going to be a challenge.
Mhm.
Points are at a premium at this league. You want to get as many as you can. I'm not too disheartened by that. Racing has, I think the number is two out of their first seven matches are at home. The five are on the road. So
Mhm.
that was always going to be a tough challenge to get points on the in the table the first half, the first few matches of the season. So not overly concerned about the number. I'm a little bit more concerned about that long injury list.
Mm. Assuming that you get a couple of players back against Houston, and you taking into consideration a little bit about the history between the two teams, especially last year, Houston was only able to pick up a single point from the two games that they played, and Racing coming out undefeated in those two games. I mean, do you think that this is a case where you mentioned that, Racing couldn't win and carry, maybe Houston can't beat Racing, or do you think it's just a season where Louisville got a little lucky?
I don't know if it was luck necessarily. I do know that prior to last season, Jane Campbell seemed to have her best match of the season against Racing just pretty much every time they played. I mean, she's a great keeper anyway, but she seemed to always have a save of the week candidate and win the same week that she played Racing. So if we can catch Campbell on an off night, if Racing can catch Campbell on an off night, I think there's a chance. But I do see the clubs as pretty evenly matched at full strength, but Racing's not at full strength. So I'd give a clear advantage to Houston at home in this match.
And outside of health and overall looking at the personnel, you mentioned that the coach is the right person for the job. Um, Talk to me a little bit about that. Walk me through maybe maybe that philosophy that they're instilling or something along the lines of that where you feel confident in saying that this is the right person to lead this team.
Yeah, I think Bev won Coach of the Year last year deservedly. I think just for what Louisville will have to do to win, because again, they're not a club that's going to be able to go out and sign a bunch of flashy talent. They're going to have to build and develop. I think she's proven herself to be a good developer of talent. She's very bright tactically. She's very good at mid game adjustments, especially after halftime. So that always gives Racing a fighting chance. The style that Racing play comes from Bev. It is, a high pressing style a lot of the time. They want to hit you in transition, fine not having the ball. So that all comes from her. That's a philosophy that she brings, I think, for a club that kind of aspires to be in the playoff hunt, but is probably going to be mid table. You almost have to build yourself that way. So I think it's so that when I say right coach, I think yes, that she's the right coach for that. Now I believe in her career. Bev will go on and do bigger and better things. I don't know how soon that'll be. I'd love to have her in Louisville for the long run, but I would imagine that at some point, somebody's going to tap her on the shoulder with a different opportunity that she'll pursue. But a lot of that success is predicated on kind of what Bev builds and how the players buy in. And honestly, the roster building that goes along with that, the roster is built to get players that Bev wants.
Okay. And I mean, roster construction is a little bit of a sore subject considering all the injuries, and considering the lack of flexibility that you really have with that. Um, but but you mentioned Sarah Weber, and a healthy version of her could really cause an impact. Um, are you seeing, due to the injuries, any players throughout the season or the start of the season at least, that have kind of surprised you, that have kind of been given opportunities that normally they wouldn't have?
So not necessarily a surprise. I think we've seen her in the role before, but Kayla Fisher, because we still don't know the status of Savannah DeMello, kind of falls back into Savannah's historic position as the central attacking midfielder, number 10. So I think she's better up front as as a nine, maybe on the wing, but I like her as a nine. But she has settled in decently to that number 10 role, but she doesn't play in the 10 role the entire match. A lot of times they'll sub a Weber out from the nine, and then Fisher will slide up and play at the nine at the tail end of the match. So Fisher's been impressive. Emma Sears, is always impressive. Again, missing the last match hurt, but she seems to have kicked on from her breakout year last year. I think one of the things that maybe spoiled racing fans a little bit last year was that you had Weber and Haas and O'Kane, all first year players last year, come on, play just about every match, contribute greatly as rookies. There's not going to be a rookie this year that I think is going to be able to contribute as much. Number one, because I don't think the minutes are there. But they do have some talented rookies, but we haven't seen enough of them yet to say they're going to be a breakout star.
I yeah, I would say that that's definitely a contrast with the Dash, considering that I mean they've fielded 3 or 4 rookies on average every single game to start the season, and I mean, considering with the new format now abandoning the NWSL draft, I think the role of rookies really has changed. I think it's I don't know about you, but I feel like for me they've kind of been expected to do a little more now that the whole thing of the draft and that kind of like introduction to NWSL has kind of been changed. But just for those who do not know about MSC's availability, she's listed as currently questionable against Houston, and so definitely we'll be able to see whether she'll make some minutes there and cause the Dash a real impact. But to wrap it up, just one last question for you. I mean, this this is a matchup that we've seen kind of be very low scoring throughout the history of these two clubs. And partially it is because of the Dash's lack of really offensive firepower. But it seems like really both teams have kind of had a pretty easy time scoring despite results. Louisville at least scoring once every single game throughout the season, and the Houston Dash starting 2-1, and having that hot start that they did. Do you think that we're gonna see a high scoring game? Do you think we're gonna see a low scoring game, which is kind of a little more physical, a little gritty? What kind of game should fans expect to see coming into Friday?
Yeah, I hate to make predictions. I typically don't make them, so I'll answer it the best I can. Um, what I would expect from a style of play perspective is a cagey match,
Okay.
them filling each other out. Now, those typically lead to low scoring matches. I'll put it this way: I think a nil draw is not off the table. And I think that would be a decent result for Louisville, a disappointing one for Houston. But I think there's a couple of nil draws in the history of this fixture. Having another one, I don't think is out of the realm of the possibility. But I will say that the Racing will struggle to keep clean sheets this year, even if they're fully fit on in defense. Clean sheets are probably not in their not in their locker to do, and especially with a makeshift back line, which it will definitely be. I hope it's a little bit consistency, but hopefully it will not be the same configuration as last match, which pulled Taylor Flint into the center back position, which both weakened the back line and weakened the midfield line as well by pulling her back into that. This is an emergency. So I'm hoping we'll get another look back line. Maybe we'll get another healthy player back. But I think the Dash will score. We'll see if Racing score. We'll put it that way.
Fair enough. I personally kind of agree with you that historically we've seen this be a very low scoring effort for from both sides, and I think Houston's currently trying to develop Shell Energy into their sort of fortress. They ended last season winning five straight at home. They won against Boston Legacy in a 3-0 route that is not all surprising, seeing Boston's next couple of games that they've played. But I definitely do see at least Louisville's pressing and counterattacking style of football kind of be a disruptive factor in the Dash's overall style. So I also don't like making predictions because just never found it fun to really put a label on it. But I'm thinking we're at most seeing two goals, and I don't really see anything more. But that's it from me. I really appreciate you, Michael, for sitting down and chatting with and learning a little bit more about Louisville ahead of this matchup. Um, Thank you all for tuning in, and looking forward to speaking with all of y'all ahead of the game. And I will see y'all very, very soon.